Hi, welcome back for section 2 of my free needle felting video tutorial. So in this section I'm going to talk about two common types of wool that you might encounter when you're beginning to needle felt. So the first one here on the left is called wool batting. This one here on the right is called wool roving. So these are both 100% wool fiber, but they're simply two different preparations. So they both, in their preparations, will start out somewhat similarly. They will both get put onto a big carding machine, which is where you put the fiber, which will comb, align, and layer the fibers to some degree. But there are some differences then in how much each of those is processed. So we'll start with the batting. When the batting is put onto the carding machine, it combs it and layers it into these thin sheets. So you'll have one sheet, and then the next sheet will be put on top of it with the fibers going perpendicular, and the one after that will go perpendicular to that, so that you end up with a thick, fluffy sheet where the fibers are no longer aligned. I mean, you can see it just looking at it. You know, it kind of already looks kind of matted together. This makes it really wonderful for felting because there's so many different areas of the fibers, those scales for the needles to grab onto. It felts up really quickly. So that is wool batting. You might also hear it referred to as bats or fleece. This over here is called wool roving. So this one, when it's put onto that carding machine, it's the fibers are combed and aligned nicely, and then it's pulled off of that machine in these long strips like this. Instead of making sheets like this one, it kind of makes these long rope-like forms, and you can see that the fibers in there are still mostly aligned. Although if you start to pull it apart a bit, you can see that there's some little bit of crisscrossing, but for the most part, the fibers are aligned. So this actually works really wonderfully for needle felting as well. What you'll need to do if you're using roving, however, is essentially turn it into a bat or a batting to prepare it for felting, because like I said, because these fibers are no longer aligned, it actually makes it really nice and easy for the felting needle to grab onto those fibers. So I'm also going to show you right now how you would prepare wool roving for felting. So the first thing you need to do is pull it apart. Now you'll notice if you grip onto this and pull, it's not going to come apart. That's because there's too many fibers there. It's actually pretty strong, stronger than you would think, that are holding it together. What you need to do in order to separate wool roving is to grip it firmly, you know, comfortable, I don't know, 4 to 5 inches apart. Gripping it pretty firmly between your thumb and forefinger, but not really holding too tight with the rest of your hand, and just kind of gently tease it apart. And you see how easily it comes apart like that. Then what you'll do is you'll just kind of layer it a few times and gently pull it apart like that. And maybe pull it apart to the side a little bit too. What you're essentially doing, as I said, is making it into its own wool batting, because now the fibers are not aligned, and so it'll felt up really nice and easily. So, as I said, both of these are wonderfully suited for needle felting. Now you will find different types of wool out there for felting. So some wools are going to be really fine, such as merino, which will have that kind of sheen. It's almost a little bit slippery. Then there's other really coarse wool too. The wool that I offer on my website for felting supplies is the same wool that I use in my own needle felting projects, because I find that it felts the easiest. So mine is kind of a medium texture and coarseness, I would say. So I find that, you know, you can still get a very nice smooth finish when you're felting with it, but it's got enough crimp and coarseness in it that it still will grab onto the needle. It's not too slippery, it's not too fine. So those are the two different preparations of wool. You can see now I've turned our roving into batting, so they look very similar. But there you have it for the two different types of wool that you'll most commonly encounter when you're starting to needle felt. So next up is the video about felting needles and the different sizes and how they work.